The dust hadn't even settled from her boots, hitting the gravel, when Captain Alina Ward heard the words that ended her career. "You're done here." Colonel Marcus Hendricks didn't look up from his desk. His pen scratched across a form, her termination paperwork, with the casual indifference of someone signing a routine supply request. The fluorescent lights of the forward operating base Sentinel Command office buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the cramped room. Alina stood at rigid attention, her hands trembling at her sides. Not from fear, from rage. "Sir, with all due respect, I have documented evidence of systematic. You have allegations." Hendricks finally raised his eyes. Cold, dismissive, unfounded, unsubstantiated allegations against officers who have served this nation for decades. Against Major Collins himself. "The manifests don't lie, sir. 17 shipments in the last 4 months. All rerouted. All missing. That's 400 crates of weapons, ammunition, and equipment that never reached their intended." "Enough." The colonel's palm slammed flat against the desk. The sound cracked through the stale air like a gunshot. "You've made accusations against superior officers without authorization, leaked classified logistics data through unauthorized channels, and now you stand here in my office telling me that that command, is somehow complicit in your conspiracy theory." Alina's jaw tightened. She could feel the weight of her service. 12 years of deployments, commendations, and sacrifice crumbling beneath her feet. "I sent that data through encrypted channels because internal reporting went nowhere, sir. 3 formal complaints. All buried." "What you sent," Hendricks said, standing slowly, "was classified military information through a channel that doesn't officially exist. That's not whistleblowing, Captain. That's treason." The word hung in the air like smoke. Treason. Alina's stomach dropped. She'd known there would be consequences. She'd known they would try to silence her. But hearing that word, that specific word, made her realize how deep this went. "You have 2 hours to collect your personal effects," Hendricks continued, straightening his uniform. "Military police will escort you to the airfield. You'll be on the next transport back to Bagram for processing. From there, you'll be returned stateside to face formal review. And the missing weapons?" Hendricks' expression didn't flicker. "There are no missing weapons, Captain. There never were. If that opening hooked you, stay with me. This story only gets heavier from here. Subscribe now for more war stories like this and hit that notification bell. Now, let me show you what happened next." The door opened behind her. 2 MPs stepped inside, their faces blank, professional. They'd done this before. They'd escort disgraced officers before. To them, she was just another name on a processing form. "Ma'am," one of them said, "if you'll come with us." Alina looked at Hendricks one last time. The colonel had already returned to his paperwork, pen scratching away like nothing had happened, like her career, her integrity, her entire identity hadn't just been erased in under 5 minutes. She turned and walked. The heat hit her like a wall as she stepped outside. FOB Sentinels sprawled across the Afghan desert, a maze of concrete barriers, prefab buildings, and chain-link fencing that had been her home for the past 14 months. She knew every supply tent, every motor pool, every ammunition depot within its perimeter. She knew exactly which crates had been redirected. She knew exactly which officers had signed the falsified transfer orders. And she knew with absolute certainty that Major David Collins, the base's senior logistics coordinator, was at the center of it all. The MPs flanked her as she walked toward the officer quarters. Around them, base personnel went about their routines. Mechanics working on vehicles, communication specialists running cable, a patrol returning to the main gate. Nobody looked at her. Word traveled fast in the combat outpost. By now, everyone knew. Captain Ward, the whistleblower, the traitor. Alina's chest burned with humiliation. 12 years. 3 combat deployments. A Bronze Star for coordinating supply operations under fire during the Kandahar offensive. None of it mattered now. Her quarters were small. A metal bed, a footlocker, a desk cluttered with logbooks and charts. The walls were bare except for a single photograph. Her father, Staff Sergeant Thomas Ward, taken 3 months before an IED ended his life in Ramadi. She stared at that photograph now. He'd taught her what honor meant. He'd taught her that doing the right thing wasn't always the easy thing. He'd taught her that some battles couldn't be won with weapons. They had to be won with truth. And now the truth had destroyed her. She packed methodically. Clothes, toiletries, the photograph. A worn copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations that had belonged to her father. Everything else, the logbooks, the charts, the evidence she copied before sending it through that encrypted channel. She left exactly where it was. They'd already taken everything that mattered. An hour and 43 minutes after Colonel Hendricks signed her termination, Captain Alina Ward walked out of her quarters for the last time. The MPs fell in beside her, their boots crunching on gravel as they escorted her toward the airfield. The sun was setting over the mountains, orange and red bleeding across the sky like an open wound. Somewhere in the distance, artillery rumbled, a fire base exchanging fire with insurgent positions along the valley. War continued. It always continued. And now she'd be leaving it behind, branded a traitor for trying to stop weapons from reaching the very enemies who wanted to kill American soldiers. The irony tasted like ash. They reached the airfield, a single strip of packed earth with a handful of transport aircraft parked along the edge. AC-130 sat waiting, its rear ramped down, crew conducting pre-flight checks. "Wait here," one of the MPs said. "Transport departs in 20. Alina nodded. She set down her duffel and watched the crew work. 20 minutes. Then a flight to Bagram. Then another flight stateside. Then formal review, court-martial, prison. She'd known the risks when she sent that data. She'd known they might not believe her. She'd known command might be compromised. What she hadn't known was how deep the conspiracy ran. A sound reached her ears. Distant at first. Growing louder. Rotors. She turned toward the east, squinting against the dying sun. A helicopter was approaching, fast and low, hugging the terrain like a predator stalking prey. Not one of theirs. At least, not one she recognized. The aircraft materialized through the dust haze, a Blackhawk, but stripped of standard markings. No unit designation. No tail number she could identify. Just matte black paint and tinted windows that reflected nothing. Alina's pulse quickened. The MPs noticed too. They exchanged glances, hands drifting toward their sidearms. This wasn't standard protocol. This wasn't scheduled. The Blackhawk flared and touched down 50 meters away. The rotor wash kicked up a wall of sand that forced everyone to shield their eyes. Through the chaos, Alina watched the side door slide open. Four figures emerged. They moved with a fluidity that marked them immediately as operators. Not regular infantry, not support personnel. These were Tier 1 assets, SEALs or Delta, the kind of men who didn't officially exist. They wore civilian clothes over body armor, faces obscured by chamas and tactical sunglasses, weapons ready but not raised. The lead figure approached. Captain Ward. His voice cut through the rotor noise like a blade. Alina's heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't extraction protocol. This wasn't anything she'd been trained for. Who's asking? The lead operator pulled down his shamak, revealing weathered features. A face carved by years of deployments, late 40s, with eyes that had seen more death than most people could imagine. Commander Drake Torres. Call sign Nomad. He stopped 3 feet from her, close enough that she could see the scars along his jaw. The tactical radio nestled against his ear, the muzzle of the suppressed rifle hanging from his chest rig. "You need to come with us." The MPs stepped forward. "Sir, this officer is under escort. She's being transported to Bagram for her." "She's not going to Bagram." Torres didn't even look at them. His eyes stayed locked on Alina, assessing, calculating. Behind him, the other 3 operators fanned out, their postures relaxed but ready. Men who could shift from conversation to combat in a heartbeat. "Sir, we have orders." "Your orders just changed." Torres finally turned to face the MPs. Something in his expression, something cold and absolute, made both soldiers take an unconscious step backward. Colonel Hendricks will receive notification within the hour. Captain Ward is now under different jurisdiction. What jurisdiction? Torres smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. The kind that doesn't exist. Alina watched the exchange with growing confusion. Her mind raced through possibilities. Intelligence services, Special Operations Command, some kind of internal affairs unit she'd never heard of. None of it made sense. "Commander," she said, finding her voice, "what exactly is happening here?" Torres turned back to her. His expression softened, not quite friendly, but no longer predatory. "You pushed a button 3 days ago, Captain. Sent a data packet through an encrypted channel that wasn't supposed to exist." Her blood ran cold. The channel, the evidence she transmitted. "That button," Torres continued, "routed your information to a monitoring station that tracks exactly these kinds of transmissions. We've been waiting for someone inside the supply chain to find the courage to speak up. Waiting for 8 months. We knew the weapons were being diverted. We knew who was involved, at least some of them. What we didn't have was someone on the ground with access to the documentation trail. Someone willing to risk everything." He gestured toward the Blackhawk. "You gave us what we needed. Now we're here to make sure you survive long enough to help us use it." Alina's thoughts spun. 8 months. They'd been investigating for 8 months. And she'd stumbled into the middle of it without even knowing. "What about my hearing? The charges?" "There won't be any charges. Not once we're finished." Torres glanced back at the MPs, who stood frozen, clearly unsure how to proceed. "Your commanding officers think you're a traitor, Captain. Within 48 hours, they'll know you're a hero. But right now we need to move. The people who wanted you silenced will realize their escort didn't work. When they do, they'll send something more permanent." A chill ran through her despite the desert heat. "You're saying they'd kill me?" "I'm saying they've already tried." Torres's voice was flat, matter-of-fact. "Your vehicle transport to the airfield was supposed to be ambushed 2 kilometers outside the wire. An IED blamed on insurgents. Tragic accident. Case closed." The ground seemed to shift beneath her feet. "How do you know that?" "Because we intercepted the order 30 minutes ago." He extended a hand toward the helicopter. "We can discuss details in the air, Captain. Right now, every second we stay on this tarmac is a second the wrong people use to adjust their plans." "Coming." Alina looked at the Blackhawk, at the operators waiting beside it, at the MPs who stood helpless and confused. Every instinct she developed over 12 years of military service screamed at her to wait for official channels, to trust the system, to follow orders. But the system had just expelled her for telling the truth. The system had tried to have her killed. She picked up her duffel. "Lead the way, Commander." The interior of the Blackhawk was stripped down. Web seats, tactical equipment, weapons racks. Alina buckled in beside a female operator who nodded once in acknowledgement, her expression unreadable behind dark tactical glasses. Torres sat across from her as the helicopter lifted off, banking hard toward the mountains as the rotors screamed against the thin air. "Introductions," he shouted over the noise. "You've met me. That's Forge." He pointed to a massive operator cleaning a suppressed rifle. Early 40s, shaved head, forearms thick as tree branches, weapons and breaching. "Ma'am." Forge's voice was a deep rumble. "Ghost." Torres indicated the woman beside her. Early 30s, dark hair pulled back tight. Features that suggested mixed heritage, communications and intelligence. Ghost gave another nod. "Heard about what you did. Takes guts." And Preacher, the last operator, looked youngest. Late 20s, compact build, medical kit strapped to his vest. "He keeps us breathing when things go sideways." Preacher offered a brief smile. "Don't worry. You probably won't need my services." "Probably," Forge muttered. Torres pulled out a tablet, tapping the screen until it displayed a map of the region. "What do you know about Operation Serpent, Captain?" Alina frowned. "I've never heard of it." "That's the point. Serpent is a joint task force investigation into weapons diversion from U.S. military supply chains. Started 18 months ago after satellite imagery showed American hardware showing up in places it shouldn't. Insurgent camps, black market networks, even hostile government arsenals. The map zoomed to show a web of red lines connecting various points across Afghanistan, Pakistan, and into Iran. We traced the diversion patterns back to the logistics command structure at bases just like Sentinel. Someone inside was rerouting shipments. falsifying manifests, and selling the weapons to the highest bidder. Major Collins, Alina said. Torres nodded slowly. Collins is part of it, but he's not the head. He's a middleman. Senior enough to move product, junior enough to be expendable if things go wrong. Then who's running it? That's what we don't know. Torres leaned forward, his expression grim. Your evidence gave us the paper trail we needed to confirm the scope of the operation. 400 crates in 4 months. That's not freelance corruption. That's organized, systematic. Someone with access to strategic logistics across multiple theaters is coordinating this. Alina absorbed the information. She'd suspected the corruption went beyond Collins, but hearing it confirmed, hearing that she'd stumbled onto something this vast, made her head swim. Where are we going? Black site. 30 clicks north. Off the books, off the grid. Torres tucked the tablet away. We're going to brief you on everything we know, and then you're going to help us take them down. Me? Alina shook her head. I'm a logistics officer, commander. I push paper. I track shipments. I'm not. You're exactly what we need. Torres cut her off. You know those supply manifests better than anyone. You know the routing codes, the transfer protocols, the blind spots in the system. Our operators can kick in doors and eliminate targets. What we can't do is identify which doors to kick. He held her gaze. You give us the targets. Captain, we'll handle the rest. The Blackhawk banked again, descending toward a cluster of buildings nestled in a mountain valley. No runway, no lights, just a collection of low structures that blended almost perfectly with the surrounding terrain. As they touched down, Alina felt something shift inside her. 3 hours ago, she'd been a disgraced officer awaiting court-martial. Now she was part of something that operated in the shadows, something that ignored official channels because official channels had been compromised. She should have been terrified. Instead, for the first time since Hendricks had signed her termination papers, she felt something like hope. They hit the ground running. The black site had no official name. Torres called it the Nest, a cluster of hardened structures built into the mountainside, invisible from the air, accessible only by helicopter or a network of hidden trails. Inside, it looked like a tactical operations center pulled straight from a Pentagon thriller. Multiple screens displaying satellite feeds, communications equipment humming with encrypted traffic, and operators moving between stations with the quiet efficiency of professionals. Alina followed Torres through a narrow corridor into a briefing room. The walls were covered with photographs, maps, and documents, a sprawling visualization of the corruption network she'd uncovered. And at the center of it all, a photograph of Major David Collins. Recognize him? Torres asked. Unfortunately. She studied the display more closely. Collins's photo was connected by red string to a dozen other images. Officers, contractors, even foreign nationals she didn't recognize. The web spread outward like a spider's trap, touching bases across Afghanistan, Iraq, and into locations she couldn't immediately identify. How long has this been going on? Best estimate? 3 years, maybe longer. Torres moved to a central table where a laptop sat open, its screen displaying spreadsheet data that Alina immediately recognized. Her data, your evidence, he continued, confirmed what we suspected but couldn't prove. Collins has been systematically rerouting weapons shipments through a network of corrupt logistics personnel. The weapons it tagged as damaged or destroyed transfer to disposal depots, and then they disappear and end up in enemy hands. Some of them, the ones that don't get sold on the black market, end up in insurgent arsenals across 3 countries. We've recovered American rifles from Taliban fighters in Helmand, from militia groups in Syria, even from Iranian-backed operatives in Iraq. The magnitude of it pressed down on Alina like physical weight. Every weapon that reached enemy hands meant a potential American casualty. Every bullet that shouldn't exist could be fired at soldiers who trusted their supply chain. Who else is involved? Ghost appeared at the doorway, tablet in hand. We've identified 17 confirmed conspirators across 6 bases. Colonel Hendricks, the one who expelled you, we don't think he's directly involved, but he's definitely being fed bad information by people who are. What about above Collins? You said he's a middleman. We've traced communications to someone inside Strategic Logistics Command, possibly at theater level, possibly higher. Ghost pulled up a series of encrypted communications on a wall-mounted display. The problem is, whoever's running this is careful. They use burner equipment, dead drops, and cutouts. We've never been able to identify them directly. Torres crossed his arms. That's where you come in, Captain. We can track weapons movements. We can intercept communications. What we can't do is interpret the logistical signatures the way someone with your background can. Alina studied the communications, fragments of coded messages, partial manifests, transfer authorizations with subtle anomalies that would mean nothing to an outsider. But to her, they told a story. This one, she pointed to a transfer order dated 6 weeks prior. The authorization code is wrong. It's using a format that was deprecated 8 months ago. Nobody uses that code sequence anymore unless they're routing around a new tracking system. Ghost leaned forward. What does that tell you? It tells me someone inside the logistics software team helped build a backdoor, a way to move shipments that don't show up in the standard audit trail. Alina's mind raced as patterns emerged from the chaos. I saw similar anomalies in my own reviews, but I didn't know what they meant. I thought it was just outdated paperwork. Can you identify other shipments using the same method? Given access to the full database? Yes. She turned to Torres. But I'll need the raw manifests, not the sanitized versions that go to command. The ones with the serial number logs and chain of custody signatures. Torres nodded slowly. We can get you that. It'll take time. We're pulling data from multiple sources, and some of it has to be extracted carefully to avoid alerting the network. How much time? 12 hours. Maybe less if Ghost can work her magic. The communications specialist smiled without humor. I'll make it happen. Alina felt the exhaustion of the past few hours pressing against her, but something else pushed back. A sense of purpose she hadn't felt in months. She wasn't a disgraced officer anymore. She wasn't waiting for a court-martial that would destroy her career. She was fighting back. While we wait for the data, Torres said, let me show you what we're dealing with on the operational side. He led her to another screen displaying a regional map with several locations marked in red. These are the known distribution points, places where diverted weapons have been staged before moving into enemy hands. We've been watching them for weeks, but we haven't moved because we didn't have the full picture. Hit one depot, the others go dark. We lose the whole network. So you need to hit them simultaneously. Exactly. Multiple coordinated strikes, all within the same window. Take down the entire operation before they can warn each other or destroy evidence. Alina studied the map. 5 locations spread across 100 kilometers of hostile territory. Mountains, valleys, villages, terrain that favor defenders. That's a massive operation. How many teams do you have? Counting us? 24 operators across 4 elements. Torres's expression was grim. It's not enough for a conventional assault, but we're not conventional. Black Viper Task Force. Ghost added from her station. Officially, we don't exist. Unofficially, we're the unit command calls when the regular rules don't apply. Alina processed this. She'd heard rumors over the years. Whispers about shadow units that operate outside normal chains of command, answering to authorities that most soldiers never even knew existed. She'd always dismissed them as fantasy. Now she was standing in the middle of one. What do you need from me specifically? Torres pulled up another screen. Your knowledge of supply manifests will help us identify which depots hold the highest value evidence. Weapons are important, but documentation is everything. We need to capture records that prove who authorized the diversions, who received payment, who's at the top of this thing. The command hub, Alina said slowly. There has to be one, a central location where the coordination happens. We believe so, but we haven't identified it yet. She turned back to the web of photographs on the wall. Collins's face stared back at her, the man who had signed her termination recommendation, who had smiled as her career crumbled, who had probably arranged for her to die in a staged IED attack. I might be able to find it, she said. Collins was always protective of certain supply routes, shipments that he handled personally, that never went through the normal approval process. I flagged him in my reports, but nobody listened. Where did those shipments go? That's what I never figured out. The documentation dead-ended at a transfer point called Echo 7. I couldn't find any record of what Echo 7 actually was. Ghost was already typing. Echo 7, running it against our database now. Silence stretched as data scrolled across her screen. Then she stopped, got something. Everyone turned. Echo 7 is a decommissioned firebase in the Karengal Valley, officially abandoned 2 years ago after the drawdown. But satellite imagery from last week shows recent vehicle activity. Heat signatures consistent with generators. Someone's using it. Torres moved to examine the imagery. His expression hardened. That's it. That's the command hub. Alina felt a surge of grim satisfaction. Echo 7. She'd written that designation dozens of times without understanding what it meant. Now she knew. If we're going to take down the network, Torres said, we need to hit that location first. Capture the leadership, secure the evidence, then roll up the distribution depots before word spreads. That's a tight timeline. Forge commented from his position near the door. Echo 7's in the Karengal. That valley's hostile as hell, which is exactly why they chose it. Torres turned to Alina. Captain, I need you to go through everything you know about Collins's operations. Every shipment, every anomaly, every detail that seemed off. Ghost will help you cross-reference against our intelligence. Alina nodded. What's the timeline? We hit Echo 7 in 48 hours. Before that, we need target packages on the distribution depots and confirmation that we've identified all the key players. Torres's voice carried the weight of command, authority earned through years of operations, not simply rank. This is your chance, Captain. Everything they took from you, everything they tried to destroy, this is how you get it back. She met his gaze. Then let's get to work. The next 16 hours blurred into a marathon of data analysis, cross-referencing, and operational planning. Alina worked alongside Ghost in the communications center, pulling apart logistics records while operators came and went, preparing equipment for the coming mission. The raw manifest told a story that the sanitized reports had hidden. Patterns emerged, shipments flagged for disposal that never reached destruction facilities, transfer authorizations signed by personnel who didn't have the clearance to make such decisions, and a shadow network of routing codes that bypassed every oversight mechanism in the system. There, Alina pointed to a cluster of entries on her screen. These 6 shipments all went through Echo 7 between March and June. Same authorization format, same anomalous routing. And look at the contents. Ghost leaned in. Javelin missiles, Stinger systems, encrypted communications gear, high-value portable, and impossible to trace once they leave controlled inventory. Alina pulled up a secondary screen. If I had to guess, these weren't going to black market. This is the kind of hardware you give to proxy forces. State-sponsored diversion? Maybe. Or someone building their own private army. She scrolled through more data. Either way, Collins wasn't just running a corruption ring. He was enabling something much bigger. The door opened. Torres entered, followed by Forge and Preacher. All 3 were fully kitted. Plate carriers, weapons, tactical gear arranged with the obsessive precision of men who'd done this 1,000 times. Update, Torres said. Ghost gestured to the main display, where a tactical map now showed the Echo 7 compound in detail. Satellite pass 3 hours ago confirmed the location is active. We're seeing 12 to 15 personnel on site, plus what looks like a hardened communications bunker at the center of the compound. Defenses, light perimeter security, motion sensors on the main approaches. Nothing heavy. They're relying on isolation rather than firepower. Torres studied the layout. Entry points. 3 viable options. Ghost highlighted routes on the map. Northern approach to the ridgeline offers concealment but requires a long traverse. Southern route has the shortest distance but crosses open ground. Eastern approach, she paused, is the steepest, but it puts us directly above the communications bunker. Eastern it is. Torres turned to Alina. Captain, we need you on this assault. The words hit her like a physical shock. Me? You know the documentation systems better than anyone. When we take that bunker, there's going to be a narrow window to extract the most critical evidence before they can destroy it. I need someone who can look at a filing system and immediately identify what matters. I'm not a combat operator. Commander, I've never. You won't be in the stack. You'll be behind us, protected by the team. Once we secure the bunker, you move in and do your job. Torres's expression was firm but not unkind. I wouldn't ask if I had another option, but we don't have time to train someone else on logistics systems, and we can't risk missing the key evidence. Alina's heart pounded. She thought about the years of training she'd received. Basic combat skills, defensive tactics, all the things that every officer learned but hoped never to use. She thought about her father, about the IED that had taken him in Ramadi, about whether she was ready to face that same risk. Then she thought about Collins, about the weapons that were killing American soldiers, about everything she'd sacrificed to expose the truth. Okay, she said, I'll do it. Torres nodded. Forge, get her fitted. Standard kit, vest, helmet, sidearm. Nothing fancy. The big operator studied Alina with a critical eye. You qualified on the M17, marksman, recertified 8 months ago. A hint of approval crossed Forge's weathered features. Good enough. Come with me. The armory was a small room adjacent to the main corridor, lined with weapons, equipment, and tactical gear organized with military precision. Forge selected a plate carrier, adjusted the straps, and helped Alina into it. The weight settled across her shoulders, familiar from her limited combat training, but heavier than she remembered. This is level 4 protection, he said, tapping the ceramic plates. Stop most rifle rounds. Won't help against a headshot, so keep your head down. Encouraging. Realistic. Forge handed her a helmet, then a holstered M17 pistol. You're a principal on this op. That means your job is to stay behind the operators, follow instructions, and not get dead. If we clear a room and tell you it's safe, believe us. If we tell you to move, move fast. If we tell you to hit the deck, you hit the deck. Understood. You fire that weapon only if you've got no other choice. And if you do fire, you shoot center mass until the threat stops moving. Forge's voice carried no judgment, only the professional pragmatism of a man who'd trained hundreds of personnel for exactly these kinds of situations. Questions. What happens if it all goes wrong? Forge was quiet for a moment. Then Preacher earns his paycheck, and we improvise. Over the next several hours, the team conducted rehearsals. Alina watched as the operators moved through simulated room-clearing procedures, practiced their breach protocols, and refined their approach to the Echo 7 compound. She stayed out of the way, absorbing their methods, memorizing the communications protocols Ghost had provided. At one point, Torres found her sitting alone in the briefing room, studying the photographs on the wall. Getting cold feet, he asked. No. She didn't look away from Collins's image. Getting focus. Torres sat across from her, in the quiet of the room, away from the operational chaos. He seemed different, more human, less commander. I read your service record, he said. Bronze Star in Kandahar. Kept a supply convoy moving under mortar fire for 6 hours until reinforcements arrived. Saved a lot of lives that day. I did my job. That's exactly my point. Torres leaned forward. You've been in combat before. Captain, you performed under pressure. The fact that you're not holding a rifle doesn't change what you're capable of. Alina finally met his gaze. Why are you telling me this? Because tomorrow, you're going to walk into a hostile compound with the best operators on the planet. You're going to see things that most people never see. And when it's over, when the shooting stops and the smoke clears, you need to remember why you're there. To get the evidence. To finish what you started. Torres's voice hardened. You could have kept your head down, Captain. You could have ignored the missing shipments, let someone else deal with the problem, protected your career. Instead, you risked everything. That took more courage than half the assaults I've planned. He stood. Get some rest. We brief at 0300. Torres left her alone with the photographs. Alina stared at Collins's face for a long time. She thought about the weapons that had flowed through his hands, the soldiers who had died because of his betrayal, the corruption that had spread like cancer through the system she'd sworn to serve. Tomorrow it would end. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. The Blackhawk lifted off at 0400, banking north through mountain valleys that blocked radar and visual detection. Alina sat wedged between Ghost and Preacher, her plate carrier digging into her ribs, her helmet too tight despite Forge's adjustments. Outside the windows, darkness pressed against the aircraft like a living thing. Torres spoke over the tactical net. 30 minutes to insertion. Final comms check. Each operator responded in turn. Forge, Ghost, Preacher, the other elements, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta, confirmed from their own birds, their voices crackling through the encrypted channel. All elements confirmed. We're go for insertion. Alina gripped the webbing of her seat harness. Her stomach churned with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. She'd reviewed the plan a dozen times, knew her role inside and out, but nothing could truly prepare her for what was coming. Ghost leaned close. You're going to be fine. You can tell. Your breathing changed. The intelligence specialist's voice was calm, almost soothing. Everyone gets nervous before an op. Even these guys, though they'll never admit it. What do? Focus on the next step. Not the whole mission, just the next step. Insertion, then movement, then breach. One thing at a time. The helicopter banked sharply, descending toward the ridgeline above Echo 7. Through the window, Alina caught glimpses of terrain, rocks, scrub brush, a ribbon of river far below. 2 minutes to insertion, the pilot announced. The operators began their final preparations. Weapons checked. Night vision devices lowered into position. Suppressors confirmed. Remember the plan. Torres said over the net. Alpha element takes the communications bunker. Bravo secures a perimeter. Charlie hits the vehicle compound. Delta provides overwatch. Nobody moves until I give the signal. The helicopter flared and touched down on a narrow stretch of flat ground. The operators poured out in seconds, weapons up, spreading into the darkness with practiced efficiency. Alina followed Ghost, her boots crunching on loose rock as she moved toward the concealment of a nearby boulder field. The night air was cold, colder than she'd expected, and carried the faint smell of snow from the higher peaks. Alpha moving to overwatch position, Torres reported. They crept through the darkness, navigating by night vision and years of operational experience. Alina struggled to keep up, her legs burning as the terrain shifted from flat ground to steep slope, but Ghost stayed close, guiding her through the worst sections. After what felt like hours, though her watch said only 23 minutes, they reached the ridgeline overlooking the Echo 7 compound. It was larger than the satellite images had suggested. A collection of prefab buildings arranged around a central structure that Alina immediately recognized as a communications bunker. Lights glowed behind curtained windows. Vehicle engines idled near the main gate. Counting 17 hostiles, Forge reported from his position, 8 in the barracks area, 6 on perimeter patrol, 3 inside the bunker. More than expected, Torres said. Bravo, Charlie, adjust for additional targets. Bravo copies. Charlie copies. Alina studied the bunker through a borrowed optic. The building was reinforced. Thick walls, narrow windows, a single visible entrance. Whatever records Collins and his network had compiled, they were in there. On my mark, Torres said. 3, 2, 1, execute. The night erupted. Suppressed weapons fired from multiple positions. Muzzle flashes strobing through the darkness as operators engaged perimeter guards. The first hostiles dropped before they even knew they were under attack. Bodies crumpling silently, weapons clattering on stone. Perimeter clear, Bravo reported. Vehicles neutralized, Charlie confirmed. Torres moved. Alpha on me. Alina followed as the assault element descended toward the bunker. Forge took point, his massive frame somehow light on his feet as he covered angles that Alina couldn't even see. Preacher stayed close, his medical bag ready for whatever came next. They reached the bunker entrance, a reinforced metal door with an electronic lock. Forge produced a breaching charge, applying it to the hinges with surgical precision. Ready? Ready. Fire in the hole. The charge detonated with a sharp crack. The door blew inward, smoke and debris filling the corridor beyond. Forge went first, then Torres, their weapons tracking targets with lethal efficiency. Alina heard shots. 2 quick bursts, then silence. Bunker clear. 3 hostiles down. Ghost pulled her forward. You're up, Captain. The interior of the bunker was chaos. Smoke, sparking electronics, the copper smell of blood. 3 bodies lay near their workstations, weapons still in their hands. Operators moved through the space, securing corners, checking for additional threats. And in the center of it all, racks of servers, filing cabinets, and a communications terminal that was still blinking with active connections. How much time do we have? Alina asked. Minutes, Torres said, before someone outside the wire realizes they've lost contact. Get what we need. Alina moved to the terminal. Her hand shook as she accessed the system, navigating through directories and file structures that were simultaneously foreign and familiar. The corruption network had used military-standard logistics software, modified, backdoored, but fundamentally the same system she'd worked with for years. Ghost, I need a drive. Largest capacity you have. The intelligence specialist handed her a portable storage device. Alina plugged it in, initiating a bulk data transfer while she simultaneously accessed the filing cabinets, paper records, transfer authorizations, financial documents. Each one a piece of the puzzle she'd been trying to solve for months. This is everything, she said, her voice tight with exhilaration. Authorization codes, account numbers, communications logs. This is the whole network. Copy that. Torres moved to the entrance. Bravo, what's your status? Barracks cleared. 14 hostiles neutralized. No friendly casualties. Charlie? Vehicle compound secure. We found additional weapons crates ready for transport. Hundreds of them. Alina's fingers flew across the keyboard. The data transfer was 40% complete. 50. 60. We've got movement on the access road. Delta reported from the Overwatch position. Multiple vehicles inbound. Estimate 8 to 10 minutes. Torres cursed. Kuref. They had a reaction force on standby. What do we do? Preacher asked. We finished the job. Torres turned to Alina. How much longer? 3 minutes. Maybe less. You've got 90 seconds. The transfer crawled forward. 70%. 80. Contact. Delta's voice crackled through the net. Vehicles have stopped. Dismounts approaching on foot. 20+ hostiles. All elements, defensive positions. We hold this compound until Captain Ward completes extraction. Gunfire erupted outside. The distinctive crack of rifles. The deeper bark of the team's suppressed weapons answering in measured bursts. The operators around Alina moved with seamless efficiency, stacking on windows, preparing to repel the approaching force. 90%. An explosion rocked the compound. Smoke billowed past the bunker entrance. RPG. They've got RPGs. Maintain fire discipline. Don't let them close the gap. 95%. Alina grabbed the remaining documents from the filing cabinets, stuffing them into a tactical bag while the transfer completed. Her hands shook. Not from fear anymore, but from the adrenaline surging through her system. 100%. Got it. She yanked the drive free. I've got everything. All elements. Begin withdrawal. Alpha exfil through the northern corridor. Bravo, Charlie, covering fire. The next several minutes were a blur of movement, gunfire, and shouted commands. Alina stayed low, following Ghost through narrow passages and over rubble while the operators around her engaged targets she couldn't even see. Tracers laced the darkness. Explosions bloomed in the distance. They reached the extraction point as the Blackhawk roared overhead, its door gunner laying down suppressive fire that shattered the night. One by one, the team members scrambled aboard, Forge hauling Alina up by her vest straps as the helicopter lifted off. Below them, the Echo 7 compound burned. Torres pulled off his helmet, his face streaked with sweat and grime. He looked at Alina at the tactical bag clutched against her chest and allowed himself a grim smile. Well done, Captain. Alina clutched the evidence like a lifeline. Somewhere in that data was a proof that would bring down Collins and everyone else who betrayed their oaths. The mission wasn't over. Not yet. But for the first time since her expulsion, she felt like she was winning. Back at the nest, the mood was controlled chaos. Medical personnel checked operators for injuries, while Ghost and her team began processing the captured data. Alina sat in the corner of the briefing room, too wired to sleep, watching as her evidence was uploaded to secure servers. Initial analysis confirms your assessment, Ghost reported. We're looking at financial records linking Major Collins to offshore accounts in Cyprus and Dubai. Communications logs showing coordination with at least 12 other officers across 4 bases. And procurement documentation that traces weapons diversions back 18 months. That's more than enough for prosecution, Torres said. But we're still missing the top. There's more. Ghost pulled up a series of encrypted messages. These communications reference someone called Cardinal, decision-making authority, strategic direction. Whoever Cardinal is, they're running the entire operation. Can we identify them? Working on it. But the encryption is military grade. This is going to take time we don't have. Alina stood, moving to the display. She studied the messages, the formatting, the linguistic patterns that might reveal something about the sender. Wait! She pointed to one of the messages. Look at this timestamp. It was sent during the command logistics meeting on March 15th. So that meeting had limited attendance. Theater-level personnel only. Her mind raced. If Cardinal was communicating during that meeting, they had to be there, which means their theater command. Torres finished. The implication hung in the air. Theater-level officers were generals, flag ranks, people with the authority to start wars. That changes everything, Ghost said quietly. Torres's jaw tightened. We need to continue the operation. Take down the distribution depots before Cardinal realizes Echo 7 has been compromised. What about identifying Cardinal? Captain Ward's analysis has given us a starting point. We pursue that line of inquiry while executing the remaining strikes. He turned to the room. 12 hours until the next phase. Everyone gets rest. We brief at 1600. The team dispersed, but Alina remained at the display. She studied the messages, the time stamps, the fragment of information that might lead to the mastermind behind it all. Something nagged at her, a detail she couldn't quite place. Something about the communications patterns, the authorization codes, the way the network had been structured. She pulled up the logistics data she'd extracted from Echo 7 and began cross-referencing. Hours passed. Ghost brought her coffee, black, military strong, and worked alongside her, running decryption algorithms and tracing network pathways. The rest of the team slept or prepared equipment. The quiet rhythm of operational readiness, settling over the compound. At 0900, Alina found it. Ghost, look at this. The intelligence specialist leaned in. On the screen was a procurement authorization. Unremarkable at first glance, buried among thousands of similar documents. This shipment was authorized 2 weeks before I flagged the first anomaly. The authorization code matches the deprecated format I identified earlier. Okay, look at the digital signature. Alina zoomed in. It's been modified. Someone changed the originating officer's identification after the fact to hide who originally authorized it. Exactly, but the modification was sloppy. The original signature fragments are still embedded in the metadata. Alina's fingers flew across the keyboard. If I can reconstruct the original, lines of code scrolled past. Ghost watched, her expression shifting from curiosity to recognition. You're good at this. I've been tracking supply anomalies for 2 years. You learn to read between the lines. The reconstruction completed. A name appeared on the screen, and Alina's blood ran cold. Oh my God! Ghost read the name. Her face went pale. Get Torres. Now! 5 minutes later, the commander stood before the display, his expression carved from stone. Are you certain? The digital signature reconstruction is definitive, Alina said. Brigadier General Marcus Whitfield, Deputy Theater Logistics Commander. He's Cardinal. Torres stared at the name. Whitfield has direct oversight of supply operations across the entire region. He has access to everything: routing schedules, security protocols, command communications. He's also the officer who signed my original expulsion order, Alina added. I thought it was just administrative rubber stamping. But if he's Cardinal, then he personally ordered your elimination. Torres's voice was flat. You weren't just a threat to Collins. You were a threat to him. The weight of it pressed down on Alina. A general, a flag officer entrusted with the lives of thousands of soldiers. And he'd been selling weapons to enemies who would use them to kill Americans. What do we do? Torres was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the finality of a man who made impossible decisions before. We complete the mission, take down the distribution depots, secure the remaining evidence, and then we go after Whitfield directly. He's a general. He has protection, resources. He's a traitor. Torres cut her off. And in my experience, traitors always make one critical mistake. They assume their position makes them untouchable. He turned to Ghost. Begin surveillance on Whitfield's communications. I want to know where he is, who he's talking to, and what he's planning. The moment he realizes Echo 7 has been compromised, he'll try to cover his tracks. And if he runs, then we chase him. Torres looked at Alina. You've done more in the last 24 hours than most people accomplish in a career, Captain. But we're not finished yet. Can you continue? Alina thought about everything she'd sacrificed. Her career, her reputation, her safety. She thought about the soldiers who had died because weapons meant to protect them had ended up in enemy hands. I'll see this through to the end. Torres nodded. Then let's move. The distribution depot raids launch at 2200 hours. Coordinated strikes across 5 locations simultaneously. Alina monitored the operations from a Nest command center, watching as real-time feeds showed operators moving through compounds, securing evidence and neutralizing hostile forces. Depot 1 secure. 14 hostiles down. Evidence package recovered. Depot 2 clear. Minimal resistance. Found additional financial records. Depot 3, contact. Heavy resistance at the main building. Alina's heart seized as gunfire erupted through the communications channel. On the feed, she watched muzzle flashes strobe through darkness, operators moving and shooting with lethal precision. 3-1 is down. Medic. Push through. Don't let them regroup. Torres stood beside her, his jaw tight as he listened to his men fight. His hands gripped the edge of the console, the only visible sign of the tension he felt. Depot 3 status? Compound secure. 1 friendly wounded, non-critical. 18 hostiles neutralized. Continue to extraction. Over the next 3 hours, reports filtered in. All 5 depots fell. Evidence packages were recovered. Casualties were minimal. 2 operators wounded, none killed. By 0300, it was over. Torres stepped back from the console. Good work. All elements returned to base for debrief. But Alina's attention had shifted. Ghost surveillance of Whitfield's communications had flagged an anomaly, encrypted traffic from an unusual source. Commander, look at this. Torres moved to her station. On the screen, a series of intercepted messages showed Whitfield communicating with someone using the same deprecated authorization codes they'd found at Echo 7. He knows. Alina said, Echo 7 going dark must have triggered an alert. He's trying to coordinate a response. What kind of response? Ghost enhanced the intercepts. He's arranging extraction. Private aircraft. Departure from Kandahar airfield in approximately. She checked the timestamp. 6 hours. He's running. Looks like it. Ghost pulled up additional data. But there's more. He's also issued a priority alert to Collins. Orders to eliminate all remaining evidence and extract to a rally point in Pakistan. Collins, the man who had expelled Alina. The man who had tried to have her killed. Where's Collins now? Torres asked. FOB Sentinel. Right where Captain Ward left him. Torres turned to Alina. He has no idea what's coming. Good. The plan came together quickly. 1 team would intercept Whitfield at Kandahar before his extraction aircraft could depart. A 2nd team, Alpha Element, would return to FOB Sentinel and apprehend Collins before he could destroy evidence or escape. Alina would go with Alpha. Torres met her eyes. You understand this won't be easy. Collins knows your face. He knows you're the one who exposed him. That's exactly why I need to be there. Revenge? Justice. Alina's voice was steady. I want him to look me in the eye when it all comes down. I want him to understand that everything he did, every weapon he sold, every soldier who died, I saw it all, and I didn't let it slide. Element. Wheels up in 30. The return to FOB Sentinel felt surreal. Alina watched through the Blackhawk's window as familiar terrain passed beneath them. The same mountains, the same desert, the same ribbon of road she'd traveled dozens of times during her assignment. But everything was different now. She wasn't Captain Ward, the disgraced whistleblower. She was part of something larger, something that existed outside the rules that had failed her. Torres reviewed the operation brief over the tactical net. Collins is quartered in the officer housing section. We approach from the east, neutralize any security, and make the apprehension. Clean and quiet, no collateral, no witnesses. Rules of engagement? Forge asked. Non-lethal preferred. Collins is more valuable alive. His testimony can corroborate the evidence we recovered. Torres paused. But if he resists with deadly force, respond appropriately. The helicopter touched down 2 kilometers outside the base perimeter. The team moved on foot through darkness, navigating by night vision toward the officer housing section. FOB Sentinel slept. Guards walked their posts. Vehicles idled near the motor pool. Nothing indicated that anyone knew what was coming. They reached the eastern wall without incident. Ford produced cutting tools and began creating an entry point through the chain-link fence. Alarm on this section? Ghost whispered. Negative. I checked the security specs before we left. Of course she had. The team slipped through the fence and moved toward the officer quarters. Alina's heart pounded as she recognized the buildings. The same structure she walked past every day for 14 months. The same paths. The same shadows. The same man who had destroyed her career slept somewhere in that building. Torres raised his hand. The team froze. Movement. Second floor, third window. Alina looked. A silhouette passed behind curtains. Collins's quarters. He's awake. Or, he knows we're coming. Torres motioned to Forge. Entry team, stack on the door. Ghost, you're on comms. Jam any outgoing signals. Copy. They move like shadows, flowing around obstacles and through doorways with the fluid precision of thousands of rehearsals. Alina stayed behind Ghost, her sidearm drawn, her breathing controlled despite the terror clawing at her chest. The entry door was unlocked. Torres went first, weapon up, sweeping left. Forge followed, covering right. Preacher held the stairwell. Ghost moved to the communications panel and began the jamming sequence. Alina followed them up. The stairs creaked beneath her boots, impossibly loud in the silence. Ahead, Torres and Forge reached the second-floor landing. Collins's door was closed. Light showed beneath it. Torres positioned himself. Forge raised his breaching ram. 3 fingers. 2. 1. The door exploded inward. Don't move. Don't move. Alina rounded the corner to see Collins standing in the center of his quarters, still in uniform, a pistol in his hand. His face was pale, shock transitioning to recognition as he saw her behind the operators. You, he breathed. Put the weapon down, Torres ordered. Collins's hand trembled. His eyes darted between the armed operators, the blocked doorway, and Alina, the woman he'd tried to destroy. You don't understand, Collins said. You don't know what you're dealing with. We know exactly what we're dealing with. Torres didn't move. Put the weapon down. Whitfield has connections everywhere. Military, intelligence, government. You can't take him down. He's too protected. Whitfield is being apprehended as we speak. Alina stepped forward. It's over, Major. Everything you built, everything you stole, it's finished. Collins's face contorted. Fear, rage, desperation. His pistol swung toward her. The shot came from Forge. Collins staggered backward, the pistol dropping from his grip as the non-lethal round impacted his chest. He collapsed against the wall, gasping, clutching his sternum where the rubber bullet had struck. Target down, Forge reported. Torres moved forward, securing Collins's weapon while Preacher began checking for injuries. The Major was alive, bruised, winded, but functional. Alina stood over him. Collins looked up at her, hatred burning in his eyes. You think this changes anything? You think you've won? I think you're going to spend the rest of your life answering for what you did. Alina's voice was calm, calmer than she'd expected. Every weapon you diverted, every soldier who died because of your betrayal, All of it is documented now. All of it is evidence. They'll bury it. They always bury it. Not this time. Torres hauled Collins to his feet. This time, it goes all the way to the top. The simultaneous apprehension of Whitfield occurred without incident. A Black Viper element intercepted the general at Kandahar airfield as he attempted to board a chartered aircraft bound for Turkey. The pilot, a civilian contractor with no knowledge of his passenger's true nature, was released. Whitfield was not. Within hours, both prisoners were transported to a secure facility where military prosecutors and intelligence officers waited. Alina was present for the initial interrogation of Collins. He sat in a metal chair, wrists secured, uniform stripped of rank insignia. The arrogance that had defined him at FOB Sentinel was gone, replaced by the hollow desperation of a man who knew his world had collapsed. Torres stood in the corner, watching. The financial records we recovered trace payments from your accounts to 6 different offshore entities. Alina said, communications logs show you coordinating weapons transfers with hostile intermediaries. We have testimony from depot personnel identifying you as a primary authorization authority. Collins said nothing. You can maintain your silence. It won't change the outcome. Alina leaned forward. But there is one thing I want to understand. When you signed my expulsion order, when you arranged for that IED ambush, did you think you'd gotten away with it? Did you believe I'd just disappear? Collins's jaw tightened. For a moment, Alina thought he wouldn't respond. Then he spoke, his voice low, bitter. You should have kept your head down. You were a logistics officer. Nothing more. Nobody cared about the manifests. Nobody cared about the discrepancies. I cared. And look where it got you. Collins's eyes were hollow. Expelled. Disgraced. Running around in the dark with shadow operators while your career burns. He laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. You won, Captain. Congratulations. But the system doesn't change. It never changes. Someone else will take my place. Someone else will find a way. Maybe. Alina stood. But they'll know what happened to you. They'll know that one logistics officer with a conscience brought down a 2-star general and a network that stretched across continents. She moved toward the door. And the next time someone thinks about betraying their oath, they'll remember this moment. Collins had no response. Outside the interrogation room, Torres was waiting. His expression was thoughtful, evaluating. Well done. I needed that. Alina's voice was quiet. I needed him to know. That's human. Torres began walking, and she fell into step beside him. What you did in there, most people would have lost control. Anger, rage, demand for him to apologize or explain. Instead, you stayed professional, strategic. I learned from watching you. Torres allowed himself a small smile. The debrief is scheduled for tomorrow morning. After that, we'll begin the process of returning you to official channels. What does that mean? It means the charges against you will be formally dismissed. Your record will be expunged. You'll receive back pay for the period of your expulsion, along with a commendation for your contributions to Operation Serpent. Alina processed this. She'd known it was coming. Torres had promised vindication, but hearing it stated so plainly made it feel suddenly real. And after that, Torres stopped walking. They stood in a quiet corridor, fluorescent lights humming overhead, the chaos of the past 48 hours finally beginning to settle. After that, you have a choice. He turned to face her. You can return to conventional service. Resume your career. Pretend none of this ever happened. Or you can join us. Torres's voice was serious. Black Viper doesn't officially exist. We don't have ranks or promotions or career paths in the traditional sense. But we do the work that matters, the work that falls through the cracks when official channels fail. Alina thought about everything she'd experienced. The humiliation of her expulsion, the fear of the IED ambush that never happened, the exhilaration of the Echo 7 assault, the cold satisfaction of confronting Collins. She thought about her father, about his belief that honor meant doing the right thing, even when the right thing wasn't easy. I need time to think. Take as long as you need. Torres resumed walking. Whatever you decide, you've earned the right to choose. The debrief the following morning was extensive. Alina recounted every detail. From her initial discovery of the manifest anomalies to her extraction by the Blackhawk to her role in the Echo 7 assault. Officers she'd never met asked questions about logistics systems, authorization protocols, and the technical details of how the corruption network had functioned. She answered everything. When it was over, a 2-star general she didn't recognize approached her. His uniform bore enough decorations to suggest decades of service. Captain Ward. She snapped to attention. Sir, at ease. The general studied her with eyes that had seen far more than she could imagine. What you accomplished over the past few days was exceptional. Commander Torres's report was effusive, and I've never known him to be effusive about anything. I did my job, sir. You did considerably more than that. The general clasped his hands behind his back. Your record will be fully restored. The expulsion has been formally rescinded, and Colonel Hendricks has been notified that you were operating under classified authority the entire time. He doesn't know about. He knows what he needs to know. The general's tone allowed no argument. Your formal reinstatement will be processed within the week. You will receive back pay, benefits, and a performance evaluation that reflects your actual contributions rather than the fabricated charges. Alina let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Thank yourself. The general turned to leave, then paused. Commander Torres mentioned he made you an offer. I hope you'll consider it seriously. People with your skills and integrity are rare, and they're exactly what this nation needs. He left without another word. 3 days later, Alina stood on a rooftop overlooking Kabul. The city sprawled beneath her, lights glittering against the darkness, the sounds of traffic and commerce drifting up from below. Somewhere out there, normal life continued. People worked. People slept. People lived without any knowledge of the shadow war that had been fought to protect them. Torres found her there. Couldn't sleep? Too much to process. Alina didn't turn. 3 days ago, I was waiting for a transport to take me to court-martial. Now I'm standing here, watching a city that has no idea how close it came to catastrophe. That's the nature of the work. Torres stepped up beside her. The victories nobody sees. The sacrifices nobody knows about. Is that enough? To know you made a difference, even if nobody else ever will. Torres was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that suggested years of asking himself the same question. No, sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes you lie awake wondering if any of it mattered. If the next threat will be worse, if the next traitor will be smarter, if the system will eventually collapse despite everything you've done, then why do you keep doing it? Because the alternative is worse. Torres turned to face her. Giving up means letting them win. The Collinses, the Whitfields, everyone who corrupts the institutions we're supposed to trust. I'd rather fight and lose and walk away and watch everything fall apart. Alina considered this. She thought about her father again, about the values he'd instilled in her, the belief that service meant something beyond rank or recognition. I've made my decision, she said. Torres waited. I want in. Black Viper. Whatever comes next. She finally looked at him. But I have one condition. Name it. I won't operate blindly. If I'm going to be part of this, I need to understand the full picture. The targets, the stakes, the consequences. I won't be another cog in a machine I don't comprehend. Torres studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. That's exactly the answer I was hoping for. He extended his hand. Welcome to the team, Captain. She shook it. Below them, the city continued its endless rhythm. Above them, stars blazed across a sky untouched by the chaos of human ambition. And between them, a partnership was forged, one that would operate in shadows, challenge corrupt systems, and fight battles that the world would never know about. The following weeks brought intensive training. Alina learned skills that had never been part of her logistics background: close quarters combat, advanced communications, tactical movement, and 1,000 small details that separated professional operators from everyone else. Ghost became her primary mentor, teaching her the intelligence tradecraft that underpinned every Black Viper operation. Information is everything, Ghost explained during one of their sessions. Weapons, tactics, manpower, all of it means nothing if you don't know where to apply it. Your job is to see patterns others miss. To identify the one detail that changes everything. Like the deprecated authorization codes. Exactly like that. Ghost smiled. You have instincts, Captain. You just need to sharpen them. Forge trained her in weapons handling. Not the basic qualifications she maintained throughout her career, but the intensive, repetitive drilling that built genuine proficiency. You'll probably never need to fire in anger, he told her. But the one time you do, you need to be ready. Hesitation gets people killed. Preacher taught her field medicine. How to treat wounds under fire, how to keep someone alive long enough for extraction, how to function when surrounded by chaos and blood. Hope for the best, he said, wrapping a practice bandage around her forearm. Prepare for the worst. And when the worst happens, remember that panic is contagious. But so is calm. Through it all, Torres watched, evaluated, occasionally offered guidance, but mostly allowed her to find her own path within the unit. By the end of the training cycle, Alina Ward was no longer the same person who had been expelled from FOB Sentinel. She was sharper, harder, more capable than she'd ever imagined. And she was ready. 6 months after her extraction by Black Viper, Captain Alina Ward received her first formal assignment as a full member of the task force. The target was a weapons trafficking network operating out of Eastern Europe, a successor organization to the cells that Collins and Whitfield had supplied. Intelligence suggested that remnants of the original conspiracy had reorganized under new leadership, establishing connections with hostile state actors and criminal enterprises. This is personal for you, Torres noted during the initial briefing. The work you did to expose the original network created enemies. Some of them survived. Good. Alina studied the target package. That means they'll be eager to make mistakes. The operation took 3 weeks. Alina served as the intelligence coordinator, synthesizing information from multiple sources, identifying the key nodes in the trafficking pipeline, and directing strike teams to the most critical targets. When it was over, 14 conspirators were in custody. Weapons shipments worth hundreds of millions of dollars had been interdicted, and the network, what remained of Collins and Whitfield's legacy, was finally, definitively destroyed. Torres met her at the exfil point as the last helicopter lifted off. How do you feel? Alina watched the burning depot recede beneath them. Smoke rose against the dawn sky, like a dark finger pointing toward the heavens. Complete, she said. For the first time since it started, I feel like it's actually finished. It's never finished. Torres's voice was gentle but honest. There will always be another threat. Another network, another enemy who believes they can operate in the shadows without consequence. I know. She turned to face him, but this chapter is closed. Collins is awaiting trial. Whitfield is in a maximum security facility. The weapons they diverted have been accounted for. Whatever comes next, that's a new fight. Torres nodded. A new fight, but you won't face it alone. Around them, the team settled into familiar rhythm of post-operation exhaustion. Forge checked his weapon. Ghost reviewed communications intercepts. Preacher organized his medical supplies. The quiet camaraderie of professionals who had risked everything together and emerged on the other side. Alina allowed herself a moment of peace. She thought about everything she'd lost, her career, her reputation, the trust she'd once placed in official systems, and everything she'd gained. A new purpose. A new family, a path forward that made sense in a way her old life never had. The helicopter banked toward the sunrise. Somewhere in the distance, new challenges waited. New enemies plotted. New battles would have to be fought. But for now, in this moment, victory was enough. 2 years after Operation Serpent, Captain Alina Ward stood before a Congressional Oversight Committee in a secure hearing room beneath the Capitol. The senators sat behind a raised dais, their expressions ranging from skeptical to openly hostile. Classification protocols meant that the public would never know about this hearing. But for those present, the stakes couldn't have been higher. Captain Ward, the committee chairman began, your testimony today concerns the activities of a unit that, according to official records, does not exist. Before we proceed, I need to confirm that you understand the legal implications of your statements. I understand, Senator. Very well. The chairman shuffled papers. The committee has reviewed the operational summaries provided by military counsel. We're particularly concerned about the legal authority under which certain actions were taken. Specifically, the apprehension of American military officers on foreign soil without congressional notification. Alina met his gaze evenly. The individuals in question were engaged in activities that constituted treason. Senator General Whitfield was actively facilitating the transfer of American weapons to hostile actors. Major Collins was complicit in those transfers and attempted to arrange my assassination when I uncovered evidence of their conspiracy. We're not disputing the guilt of the accused. We're questioning the process. With respect, Senator, the process failed. Alina's voice remained steady. I submitted 3 formal complaints through official channels. All were buried. I escalated my concerns to commanding officers. My career was terminated, and I was targeted for elimination. The only reason I'm alive to testify today is because an alternative process existed, one that didn't depend on compromised chains of command. Murmurs rippled through the committee. You're suggesting that the entire military logistics oversight structure was compromised? I'm stating that key individuals within that structure were actively working against the interests of the United States. Alina leaned forward. General Whitfield had oversight authority over the very systems designed to prevent the kind of corruption he was orchestrating. Any formal investigation would have been routed through his office and terminated before it could produce results. And this justifies operating outside legal frameworks. This justifies having frameworks that actually work. Alina's eyes swept the committee. Senators, I spent 12 years serving this country. I believed in the systems we created to ensure accountability. What I learned is that those systems can be subverted by the very people they're supposed to hold accountable. If we don't have mechanisms to address that kind of corruption, if the only response to institutional betrayal is more institutional process, then we've already lost. The hearing continued for 4 more hours. Alina answered every question with the same directness, the same refusal to apologize for decisions that had saved lives and exposed treason. When it was over, she walked out of the Capitol into afternoon sunlight. Torres was waiting. How'd it go? They don't like us. Alina fell into step beside him. They don't like what we do or how we do it, but they understand why we exist. That's the best we can hope for. Torres guided her toward a waiting vehicle. The committee will issue classified recommendations. Some of our authorities will probably be curtailed, but the core mission remains intact. And the next time someone like Whitfield emerges, we'll be ready. Torres opened the door for her, just like we were ready for you. Alina climbed in through the tinted windows. She watched the Capitol recede. The symbol of the system she'd once trusted completely, the system she now understood, was only as strong as the people committed to its ideals. She thought about her father, about what he would have said if he could see her now, about whether he would have been proud of the choices she'd made, the rules she'd broken, the boundaries she'd crossed, the justice she'd helped secure. She decided he would have understood. Some battles couldn't be won within the system. Some battles required stepping outside, not to destroy the system, but to save it from those who would corrupt it from within. That was the lesson. That was the truth she'd discovered. And that was why she would keep fighting. The medal ceremony took place at a secure facility outside Washington. No press, no public announcement, just a room full of operators, intelligence personnel, and officials who understood what had been accomplished and the cost of achieving it. Alina stood at attention as a 2-star general pinned the Distinguished Service Medal to her uniform. The citation, classified for foreseeable future, summarized her contributions to Operation Serpent in sanitized language that barely captured the reality. For exceptionally meritorious service, identification of a weapons diversion network, direct action resulting in the apprehension of hostile elements, restoration of integrity to critical supply chains. Words, phrases, none of it conveyed the fear she'd felt when Collins expelled her, the shock of learning she'd been targeted for assassination, the chaos of the Echo 7 assault, the weight of confronting the man who had tried to destroy her. But the medal wasn't about words. It was about recognition, formal acknowledgement that what she'd done mattered, that her sacrifices hadn't been in vain. After the ceremony, she found Ghost at the refreshment table. "Congratulations, Captain." "Same to you." Ghost had received a commendation as well, recognition for her intelligence, work, throughout the operation. How does it feel? Strange. Alina looked around the room. Forge was engaged in quiet conversation with Preacher. Torres stood in a corner, observing everything with his characteristic stillness. I spent 12 years building a career. I thought medals and promotions were what mattered. Now I have this. She touched the decoration on her chest, and I realize it's just metal. The real recognition is standing in this room with people who understand. That's always how it works. Ghost's smile was knowing. The stuff that looks important to outsiders, the ranks, the ceremonies, the official records, none of it captures what actually happens. We know. That's enough. Torres approached. Captain Ward. A word. They stepped into an adjacent corridor, away from the quiet celebration. You've been formally accepted into Black Viper as a permanent asset, Torres said. Your cover will be maintained as a logistics consultant attached to various commands, sufficient to explain your travel and access, insufficient to raise questions. What's my first assignment? Rest. Torres almost smiled. You've earned it. Take 3 weeks. Go somewhere that doesn't involve weapons trafficking or corrupt officers. Remind yourself why we do what we do. And after that, we have preliminary intelligence on a network moving biological materials through Southeast Asia. The pattern suggests state involvement, but the specifics are unclear. Torres's expression hardened. I'll need your analytical skills to make sense of it. I'll be ready. Torres nodded. He turned to leave, then paused. Captain, when I sent that Blackhawk to extract you from Sentinel, I wasn't certain you'd accept. The conventional choice would have been to trust the system, even after it had failed you. The system didn't fail me. People within the system failed me. There's a difference. Is there? Alina considered the question. Systems are designed by people, operated by people, corrupted by people, but they can also be saved by people. People who are willing to act when the easy path is to do nothing. Torres studied her for a long moment. That's exactly the mindset we need. He left. Alina returned to the ceremony room. The gathering was winding down. Operators departing for their next assignments. Officials returning to offices where they coordinate actions the public would never know about. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. The humiliation of expulsion. The terror of near assassination. The exhilaration of combat. The satisfaction of justice delivered. Even if the world would never understand how. 3 hours after she'd been expelled from FOB Sentinel, a Blackhawk had arrived. Everything since then had been a consequence of that moment. The moment she decided to trust strangers who offered a different kind of service, a different kind of loyalty. She didn't regret it. 6 months later, on a rooftop in Bangkok, Alina watched the sunrise through the heat haze that shrouded the city. The operation they completed overnight had dismantled a biological trafficking network that had threatened to unleash weaponized pathogens across 3 continents. Beside her, Torres stood in silence. The team had already extracted, helicopters spiriting them away to safe houses where they debrief, recover, and prepare for the next mission. Another victory nobody will ever know about, Alina said. Does that bother you? No. She meant it. The recognition I used to crave, the promotions, the career advancement, the validation from commanders who didn't understand what I did. It all seems hollow now. What matters is the work, the impact, the knowledge that because of what we did, people will live who would otherwise have died. Torres nodded slowly. That's the perspective that makes this sustainable. Without it, the weight eventually crushes you. Has it ever come close? For you? The commander was quiet for a long moment. In the growing light, the lines on his face showed years of decisions no one should have to make. Once, early in my career, an operation went wrong. People died, people I was supposed to protect. His voice was flat, distant. I spent months wondering if the mission was worth the cost. If anything I did would ever balance the scales. What changed? I realized the question was wrong. It's not about balancing scales. It's not about whether victory justifies sacrifice. It's about whether you can live with yourself if you stop trying. Alina absorbed this. For what it's worth, she said, I'm grateful you sent that Blackhawk. For what it's worth, Torres replied, I'm grateful you got on it. Below them, the city stirred to life. Markets opened. Traffic began its endless circulation. Millions of people started their days without any awareness of the darkness that had been averted while they slept. That was the nature of the work. Invisible victories. Unacknowledged sacrifices. A shadow war fought by people who'd never received parades or monuments. Alina thought about her father, about the letter he'd written before his final deployment. The letter she still carried in her personal effects, worn from years of handling. Do what's right, he'd written, even when it costs you everything. Especially when it costs you everything. Because the day you stop caring about what's right is the day you lose the part of yourself worth saving. She'd almost lost herself in FOB Sentinel. When Hendricks signed her termination. When Collins tried to have her killed. When everything she'd built collapsed around her. But she found something better in the ruins. A purpose that transcended career. A family that understood what sacrifice meant. A mission that would never be complete, but was always worth pursuing. The sun rose higher, burning away the haze that shrouded Bangkok. Somewhere in the distance, a helicopter's rotors beat against the humid air. The sound of extraction, of movement, of the endless cycle that defined their existence. Torres checked his watch. Time to go. Alina took one last look at the sunrise. Then she turned and followed him toward the stairs. There would be other operations. Other targets, other moments where everything hung in the balance, and the only thing standing between catastrophe and safety was a small team of people who refused to accept failure. She was ready. She had always been ready. She just hadn't known it until a Blackhawk arrived at her base, 3 hours after they'd thrown her away, and offered her the chance to become something more than the system had ever allowed her to be. The door closed behind her. The next mission waited. And Captain Alina Ward walked toward it without looking back. Captain Ward's story shows us that integrity sometimes requires breaking the rules to preserve what the rules were meant to protect. If this kept you engaged, hit that like button. Tell me in the comments. Would you have trusted strangers offering extraction or waited for the system to vindicate you? Subscribe if you haven't already. More stories like this are coming. See you in the next one.